We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
with global pals. It's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater podcast backstage episode with a twist, as Benita said. I am Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. Welcome. I hope everybody's new year has started out just great.
Yeah, it's an exciting start to the new year. So much theater is starting up. Everybody's got their 2023 shows happening.
Yeah, little night music over at Schenectady Light Opera. And that's going to be up and running when this, as we post. So that's a big one they're auditioning for, and up at Homemade Theater for Sound of Music.
Yes.
Those hells are alive. And I'm then on Broadway opening soon, is a show called Bad Cinderella. And Carolee Carmello, who we have been fortunate enough to interview here, and she's from Albany, is in it, as well as Mariah Little, who is a veteran of Park Playhouse. A number of years ago, she played I guess it's like a co-female lead in Ragtime. And then she went on, and this past Christmas, she was in the chorus for Radio City Music Hall. And now she'll be performing in this. And I'm going to use that as our transition over to, we got a guest backstage with us, tonight. We've got Owen Smith, the chief everything at Park Stage Company. Hi, Owen.
Hello there. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Benita. It's so good to see you.
Playhouse Stage Company. I always go looking for it as Park, because it's Park Playhouse Stage Company.
Well, we all love the park.
Okay, you got your 2 cents in for Albany. Let's go to Cohoes. No, it's
Well, it's funny. We're kind of in both places at once right now, between having, auditions this past weekend for what's upcoming in the park this summer, which is Something Rotten. And then this weekend auditioning for our youth production in the park this summer, which is Secret Garden. And at the same time working on Title of Show, which is our first show of the calendar year. So but there's just so much going on right now, whether it's...
I want to jump in and ask you about Title of Show, because your cast is interesting.
Yeah. We have a 4-person cast. The cool thing about this show is it's not a title you hear very often, and it's an odd title to begin with. I mean, Title of Show being the title of show raises some questions. But, it is a show that was written sort of in real time, as 2 writers, Jeff Bowen and Hunter Bell, back in 2004, heard of the inaugural New York Musical Theater Festival. And they were inspired to write a submission, but didn't have anything at the ready. So they began that most magical process of writing a musical, and ultimately discovered pretty quickly that the discussion of writing the show, the exploration of writing the show, was more interesting to them in that moment than any sort of spin-off idea, whether it was an adaptation or whatever, that they could possibly come up with. And so what a cool thing to start the year with something that is such a love letter to the creative process and the collaborative process. And the world's just been like, I think we can all agree 2022 was kind of a crazy year, and it falling quick on the heels of 2021, which is just as crazy a year. But at this time when it feels like people are often sort of beating each other down and breaking things down, to do a show that's really about the best of theater, which is creating something new that exists just in this moment when we're in the theater, is really cool. But to your point, Benita, it's a show, it's 4 actors, 4 chairs, and a keyboard and musical director. That's it. So
Wow.
You really have to be able to rely on strong talent. And this 4-person cast is wonderful for us, because each of them in one way or another has a connection to our history. We have former students in the cast, Nicole Zelka, who graduated from our program back in 2015 and went on to college, and after graduating has done national tour. She was in the national tour of Willy Wonka for over 2 years. She just did the national. Nicole was from Albany originally, actually, Albany proper originally,
Okay.
and she was then she just got done with the Elf tour, and then intermittently between those 2 things, she's actually been performing at Cap Rep. which, I just feel more and more we're seeing people go from company to company, and local theater artists getting exposed to so many different companies and getting to share their work at so many different companies. So she joins us for the first time since graduating. Along with her is Jacob Lenning, who is another former student, and who was just in our production of Assassins, and along with his co-Assassins cast member and yours, Benita, of course, Michelle Lapedisano. Michelle wasn't a student of ours, but all the way back in 2009, she was in the park in High School Musical. And now joining them then is someone who, again, not a former student, but someone who really sort of cut his teeth in the theater from LA, Devin Cortez, who kind of grew up at this theater. It kind of became his summer home where he worked as an intern and helped as a teaching artist. And Devin just got done with the off-Broadway run of Americano.
Richard, let me jump in. We
Please.
interviewed the writer, co-writer and producer of that.
Oh, so cool.
And we had him on first. And it was one of those weird things. I ran into a high school friend who said, Idonna's husband, that's her, everybody call, I don't even know why we call her Idonna, but Idonna's husband is doing this show off Broadway. And I went, I said, Ellen? She said, yes. And we get talking. And what was it, Ellen? Maybe a month later, Devin was in the show.
Yeah.
So talk about the small world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it also speaks to just I think the wonderful work that companies throughout the region are doing, and you see someone pop up on a New York City stage like that, and hopefully the show was very well received, and I know Devin has continued to hear from the company, and they're reworking things, and hopefully there's a Broadway run for it in the future, and hopefully he would get an opportunity to be a part of that. But how fortunate for us that for this 7-week contract, he was available to be part of title of show as well. So, for 4 actors, 4 chairs and a keyboard, you're getting 4 really strong actors. And of course, they're up there with Brian Axford as the keyboardist, who has a few lines in this. If you can imagine a musical director having to do a few lines, Brian's thrilled. And they're being led by Michael Laporto, who's just directed, a dozen and a half sensational productions for us. And this show really, you need a keen and clear pace and energy that just needs to build and build and build over 90 minutes, in which they tell the story of the creation of this musical. And for folks that are listeners of your show who are theater aficionados and who love the art form, there's so many in jokes and just little touches that you can appreciate as a fan of the theater. But I really think for other people who may not be as for the theatrically unexposed, so to speak, those folks are just going to revel in what is ultimately a story about friendship and about encouraging the people you love to follow their dreams. And what better message to start a year with than that?
You've also got some returning talent. If you can talk about it, and if you can't, we understand, for Something Rotten.
Yeah, well, we're in the process right now of working on getting a couple of different actors who have joined us in the past, to play some principal roles. This is our 35th year, and it feels like 2 minutes ago it was our 30th, and 5 minutes ago it was our 25th. So you don't want to overdo the anniversary thing, but it's still a milestone. It's an opportunity to look back and take some stock. And we like to take stock in who are the people that have done good work for us and who audiences would be, glad to see again. And so to have Molly Rose McGrath in the show, it'll be the first time she's been with us since, I guess, Sweeney Todd back in Bright Star last year, which was COVID affected in and of itself. And then we're working on we're in conversations with Jason Jacoby, who was our Sweeney Todd, and with Steve Raymond, who was in our Spam-A-Lot and our Spelling Bee. And we've been talking to them about potentially coming back, going through the casting process. There will for sure be some familiar faces in that, some familiar faces on the design team. Something Rotten is like where title of show is a love letter to the theater. Something Rotten is a send-up of the theater. And it just, nudges and pokes fun at every musical trope, and so no better way to celebrate an anniversary than something like that. And it's going to be a lot of fun in the park. Cool show to do outside.
You've also at Cahoes now, you have a resident company, which is a local company. And I can't imagine, Owen, that 10 years ago, when you were helming the Playhouse, before you moved to Cahoes, to incorporate that you could have envisioned that, in a sense, you'd be this impresario bringing in another local company. to
I
your
didn't.
own?
I certainly did not imagine that. I mean, this is my 13th year. 10 years ago, when we were celebrating our 25th, we were just in such a different place. And it just goes to show what a difference, a hardworking team can make. If you really care about what you're doing and you set your mind to it and you try to bring people together around a mission, there's a lot you can do. And we've been very lucky from the board which you have helmed over this period, and so we have so many folks that really care on that board. It doesn't matter whether they're people that have been involved in the theater in their life, or if they just treasure it and believe it should be a part of the community and accessible to people. We have so many people on that level that care. And then artists, students, musicians, actors, I mean, just across the board, people that want to keep coming back. And our recipe for that success has been treat people with respect, make them feel like the work they're doing is meaningful and makes an impact in the community and in the world around them. I couldn't have envisioned that we'd be where we are, but I'm thrilled. I grew up, as you know, in the Playhouse as a student when it was just a summer camp. And one of the things I'm most proud of is what this residents at Cohoes Music Hall, managing that space, and then even leasing a space across the street to have education and arts rehearsal space, and what that's allowed us to do in terms of growing the youth program and how many young people we're impacting year over year is just wonderful. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to as we enter a new calendar year, we for years toured shows to schools and performed in their auditoriums or their cafeterias or wherever they could have us. And touring is tough. You're talking about, if you want to do 2 shows in a day, you're talking about taking that set to a new school, and then another school is setting it up, breaking it down, the sound system, everything. And to have now a 450 seat historic venue, it's the 4th oldest concert hall in the country that is open for business. To be able to bring students to us so that they can experience this historic space and then see a curriculum-based play take shape on stage in front of them. That's so exciting. So with both Lightning Thief in April and then Pinkalicious in May, we have the opportunity to bring schools in, and these last couple of years, there's been none of that. And I'm glad to say the student matinees of Lightning Thief are completely sold out, and Pinkalicious as well on its way. And what an awesome thing to see that schools are getting back to doing those kinds of field trips. And to me, those touch points for young people experiencing the theater for the first time, going with their school for a field trip, at a time when theater prices are going nowhere but up, if we're not sort of getting those young people interested at a young age, they're not going to think of putting their disposable income behind buying theater tickets. So it's such an important thing. I know Cap Rep this year is back to having their in-house shows as well for students. So I'm really glad to see that coming back. Proctor's and the Palace as well are doing the same thing. So it's great that young students are getting back into theaters beyond just streaming and that kind of thing.
Because this is something, Ellen and I have talked about with a number of guests, is how do you build a young audience so that you have an audience, 5, 10, 20 years down the road. I know Ellen's got 2 budding actresses in her house. So she's very keenly listening to the programs that you offer.
Oh, yeah.
We start them at 5 years old, Ellen. It won't be long.
2 more years, she's there.
Well, yeah. And, I think part of that too is part of that building that young audience to me is it's the old adage. It's meeting them where they live. Yes, we want to get them into the theater, but I think it's incumbent on us to figure out how do we find the connection to these people, whether it's on TikTok or Snapchat or any number of social media platforms where they may be living part of their life where they could find out about what you're doing and hopefully get the bug. And with youth auditions coming up this weekend, one of the things that amazes me is just how much better the young talent seems to be now than when I was a kid. And part of that, I think, is access to social media, YouTube, things like that, where they can see performing arts experiences. So it's a matter, I think, of figuring out how do we make sure that they're still coming into the building? How do we make sure that they're not losing sight of, yes, it's really cool to watch a clip of Hugh Jackman playing, the Music Man on Broadway, whatever the case may be, playing Harold Hill. But it's just as important for you to be there and to understand and feel the dynamic of, I'm watching a person perform live. It's that immediacy, it's that dynamic connection that, certainly we all value and know is the difference maker between watching something on a screen and actually being in the room where it happens, so
I'm
to speak.
glad, yeah, that you mentioned Music Man, because we really should give a shout out to Richard Gatta, Niski grad, who's done a lot on Broadway, with Swing, and then became permanent, towards the end of the run with the cast. So he had a fabulous run there, and we can't wait to see what he'll be doing. And I mentioned these, we had Mariah was one of our guests, and Carolee Carmelo and Richard Gatta. So, as you're taking a listen and you're enjoying this podcast, go into our library and you can hear all these folks.
No question. And, I would also give a shout out to Anthony Cefalo, who was on the stage management team for that production of Music Man that's been running on Broadway. And, cool to shout out those folks too, because we have plenty of Capital Region students that are now making their careers in these other aspects of the arts, that they may, when they're in high school and they're bitten by the performing bug, they may not know that, to be an electrician on Broadway is a heck of a gig. To be a stage manager is a heck of a gig, So yeah, it is cool. And people should go back and listen to those conversations. Particularly Mariah, I think, is such a cool story coming from Park Playhouse and then seeing such success. We're so happy for her.
And she had some struggles.
Sure.
She landed a tour, and then the pandemic hit, and you have that moment. You think, "Oh my goodness, is everything dashed?" And she has such a strong faith. And I think after that, the world shut down. But I know in talking with her, her faith really kept her. With a vision to her tomorrow, and you mentioned the cost. I just Ellen, caught a whole load of shows back in the spring. Hello, Dolly, those ticket prices are almost a mortgage payment now. Right?
I was shocked too. I got tickets for Phantom because I wanted to see it before it closed. I was like, what? What happened to these ticket prices? They are so high.
Right?
Yeah.
I said I'm going down this, we're taping, on a Wednesday, and I'm going down on Saturday with some girlfriends, and I texted them. I go, "Do you mind spending, and it's always the one who's got the most who go, but we were all, and I've got family coming in town, and, I'm the orderer. I'm a big fan of, as you all know, we've talked about it, going to Playwrights Horizon. Mm-hmm. Because it's a small house and you really feel like, you're right there. You can sit in the back of that house and it's not a C note. And the shows, it's all new. And the performers, we did get a chance to see Downstate before it closed. And, this is like, in many ways, Capitol Rep does its new plays, things that you may be bringing in. It's different. I think that it's important for people, our audience, as you point out, probably knows this, but others, theater's not one size fits all. Mm-hmm.
It's not, and it's and the scale, the difference in seeing something in a Broadway size house to seeing something at Playwrights Horizons, not dissimilar from seeing something at Proctor's locally versus going to Cap Rep or to the music hall. And it really, I hope people will take that opportunity to go beyond the tour, to go beyond the Broadway show and see how you'll be impacted personally by seeing something in a more intimate space. And especially something you don't know. We've dabbled a little bit into new work, but I really have to give Cap Rep and especially Maggie Mancinelli Cahill, who's their producing artistic director, of course, a lot of credit, because it's one thing to do a new readings or a new work series, right? The next act is in and of itself is wonderful. You're giving playwrights the opportunity to hear their work, to get feedback, giving audiences an opportunity to hear some stories in a theatrical setting they may not have heard before. But it's that what I'm so impressed with is the fact that they commit then to bringing those stories to their stage fully produced. So the next show in their season, Secret Hour, was one of the emerging shows from a Next Act festival that is now finally going to get its full production on the new Rep stage. And to me, what a cool thing we have happening in the Capital Region. There are lots of places that read new works, Cap Rep is reading them, but then also staging them, and that to me is huge.
And that opens on the 27th of January and it runs through the 19th. And while we're at it, I got to give a shout out because they were also guests here. Outer Loop had done a production of 13 Suits, which is based on really a heartbreaking story. It was a young man who was hit on Route 9 and through a series of very unfortunate events was left to die. Just getting his life going. And Outer Loop did a production during the pandemic. Ellen and I both saw, got to see, we had the link to it, and a lot of it was taped. Well, because of the pandemic, they've gone back, they've reworked it, and they'll be doing a production of it at Capitol Rep, I think it's 16, 17, 18, or 17, 18, 19 of March. So to keep an eye out. Totally reworked production, and I can't wait to read the script and see that. So that's, here we are, the new year. That was the whole point of this, our show tonight was, what's new? What else is new out there? Nathan Lane, Pictures of Home will be opening on Broadway. So that's kind of exciting also.
I haven't heard about that one yet.
Yes.
I'll tell you one that really excited me. I love The Play That Goes Wrong, and they're coming back with Peter Pan Gone Wrong.
Yes.
And it's a limited engagement, and it's so fun. And if people aren't familiar with either, something I discovered during the pandemic on Amazon Prime, you can watch The Show That Goes Wrong. It's the same group of British performers, writers, creators, and it's basically The Play Goes Wrong in, these little half-hour segments, and they are hysterical.
I totally agree, Ellen. I loved the production, and then what they did with the series. It was actually a good example of something that sort of maintained its theatricality on film.
Yeah.
It was really cool, and of course, it's like the turning of the calendar. You look ahead to musicals that are sort of on the horizon for the year, and it's like one that stands out to me. I think it's in June, opening on Broadway, is Back to the Future. Which, if all of the notices from London are to be believed, is way better than you would imagine a musical adaptation of Back to the Future might be. And so for someone who grew up in the 80s, it is really exciting to me to get to see a musical adaptation of that movie.
See, Owen, I'm really nervous about this one. I am like ultimate Back to the Future fan. I owned a DeLorean for a while. Like, that's how much I love Back to the Future. And it terrifies me. But hopefully, I've heard great things from London. So hopefully London knows what they're talking about.
Road trip, kids. And it must be 13 Suits is 17, 18, 19, followed by A Midsummer's Night Dream at Cap Rep. And that'll be April 14th through the 7th. And a nod to Ellen.
Yes, I think I can announce it now. I'm in it. Yay!
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to. Especially my last two shows were very dramatic. I'm very excited to do a comedy next.
We all, right? Isn't that what we all want? And what else is going to be moving to Broadway is Merrily We Roll Along.
Yes,
which was it's a Sondheim that never really got its props. And now. Well, Sondheim died. Maybe that's part of it. The old, reporter in me, how people are. But you can't get a ticket.
Yeah.
It was a limited engagement off Broadway and can't get a ticket. So do you think that's part of how they're building audiences now? In the old, the world of trying out of town doesn't really happen anymore. Now things sort of arrive. Everything's 13 years old and ready for a bar mitzvah, and
it's interesting that tryout process. You see it so seldomly. I mean, maybe with some of the much bigger budget shows where producers still want to have the lower stakes, lower cost ability to work out kinks, but it is interesting now. You're seeing more and more shows that are transferring within the city itself. I mean, the same exact thing is happening with Parade, with Ben Platt, so I think, the industry, I think that's one of the coolest things is, it's always changing, and COVID created all of this, difficulty, but also opportunity in the world of streaming theater. And now coming back, it's amazing how, being in the middle of auditions now, even just how much the audition process has changed coming back from COVID, and how
Yeah.
so many companies are taking advantage of the ability to connect with people just like we are now. And, you still get a sense of who they are. You still get that opportunity to interview them. There's still something a little bit lost in translation in terms of an audition, because again, that dynamic connection of audience to performer is hard via Zoom. But yeah, the way that the genesis of shows is changing, just like everything seems to keep changing, with technology in the world.
And should point out also, Carolee Carmela was in the original production of Parade
Absolutely.
way back when. So it's that small world of theater. And Equity is now allowing for live auditions. So that begins to change things too. So, Owen, you didn't have to go to New York or even solicit. Did you solicit videos from out of town?
For Something Rotten, we have our website that certainly has the addresses and things of where to send submissions, and we get some of that. I think we've worked with enough people out there now that friends see on their social media and stuff, and they end up checking your website and seeing, oh, they've got such and such coming up, I can submit for that. But we didn't put out any kind of ad or anything like that. Other than locally putting the word out there to theater artists right here in the capital region. So we did get some submissions from out of town, but I really our auditions for Something Rotten, as I said, were incredibly well attended. It was our biggest turnout since 2010 locally for a local call. And there were some equity folks, there were some non-equity folks, but all were local theater artists. Maybe a couple people that had traveled from out of town and cared enough to come to Albany or to Cohoes to audition. But the vast majority were local theater artists. And I mean it when I say we could have cast the show probably twice over. Certainly there's a few people from out of town who we've worked with and we care about and who maybe grew up at this theater and want to come back. But we really could have cast the entire show locally twice over at those auditions. And so many of those local artists will end up on our stage this summer. And there's something extra cool about that. It's cool to be able to go and see a free show, a free Broadway style show in the park, no matter what. But for a kid sitting out there in the audience, it always comes back to kids for me, and how we're impacting that next generation. To me, for them to be able to see someone and it's like, yeah, that person might be teaching at your school. That person might be, in the, who knows, there's someone who lives in your community, breathes the same air, and there they are getting to be on stage, making a little bit of money, doing what they love. And I think that is an even bigger sort of motivator and catalyst for that young person to realize that they could do this too. And they should go take a class, or they should go audition for a community theater show or a show at their school. So the Something Rotten cast, we're sort of hammering it out this week as we get ready to open title of show. It feels like there's always a couple of different balls in the air with productions, but once that cast list comes out, I think people will be excited to see that there's going to be an awful lot of local names on it, and that's a delight to us.
Can't wait. And I'm going to give also a shout out to Fort Salem Theater, having had the delight of working up there. Their show March 17th through 26th is Spring Awakening. So that's a good one to keep tabs on. And, as we get closer into the springtime, I'm sure we'll be talking about more. Ellen, normally you would do the lightning round here, but we've done that with Owen. You got 4.5 minutes. What are you going to do?
I was going to also shout out the show I directed is coming up. So I can plug my show for the last little
Yes, Jump.
I'm directing Jump by Charlie Yvonne Simpson at Albany Civic Theater. We go up February 3rd, run to the 19th. And it's a relatively new show. It was written in 2020. So not many people know it at all. We have a cast of 4 that are all brand new to the Albany Civic Theater stage, which is just delightful. So one person who just moved here a year ago, one's a UAlbany student. So it's been really fun getting to know these people and put on this really beautiful show. So please come out and support them. It's going to be great.
Well, break a leg, Ellen, and that's awesome. I'm glad you're having a good experience working on it. And, as important as it is, to me at least, as important as it is to have companies down in New York, like Playwrights Horizons that are supporting new work, it's just as important for regional companies like Albany Civic out there in the world to pick these scripts up and be willing to share them with their audiences in their region, because a playwright can't make their living just on one show that plays in New York for one set of weeks. They have to then these things have to have another life. And so it's really cool that local audiences will have an opportunity to see that at such a reasonable price at Albany Civic. Break a leg.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Harbinger Theater just, it's Harbinger, and I think I'm trying to think if I should take a look with Black Theater, but upstate New York, but Dig is another new, and we really need to give tip our hat to Harbinger. Oh, you know what? I also have to give a shout out to Saratoga. Hang on a minute. You guys keep talking. I'm going to pull it up because we've got somebody who is a sponsor tonight. And
well, while you're bringing up that, I'll just say something I really like about Dig. First of all, I like that play, but second of all, I like that it's a collaboration between Harbinger and SLCA, Sand Lake Center for the Arts. And it's just great. I feel like, with us, we have Creative License that's a resident company at the music hall now. And, Harbinger and some other companies have been working at our studios. And I think the more that different companies can sort of come together and support each other, the better off we'll all be. And so it's cool to see Harbinger and SLCA doing sort of a co-production, a co-promotion of Dig. And I hope it goes really, really well for them.
I had the wrong group. You see, if I don't have my notes in front of me, I go off the rails. But it's they're doing Kunstler up in Saratoga at the Universal Preservation Hall. And this is a repeat. It's a show that had been worked up here before the world ended a number of years ago. But this will be going on February 3rd, 4th, and 5th at UPH. And it's iTheater Saratoga. And this I'm going to read it. I'm trying to get all this right. Broadway veteran Jeff McCarthy as the legendary Kunstler and self-described radical lawyer and civil rights activist. And it's about him wise and revealing a skillful script, an eye-opening history lesson. McCarthy seduces his audience, and he's got, New York Times says he's got the Kunstler role down pat. So that would be great to go see this. It's made possible at the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. I know, Owen, those are things that are familiar to you as you start looking for partners to help fund to put up shows. But this was something, as I said, that had a run. It really got fabulous reviews. So it's Kunstler at the Universal Preservation Hall, February 3rd and 4th, 3rd at 8, 4th at 2 and 8, and then the 5th at 2 p.m. You can just go to UPH, online, Universal Preservation Hall, for tickets. And this is quite the thing, much like we've been talking about. A new piece, something that's really been worked, great performances, and happening right here in our backyard.
Yeah. And Owen, real quick, give us the dates for title of show.
Yeah, so January 26th through February 12th, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 8 o'clock, Saturday and Sunday matinees at 2. A really, really cool show that you've probably never seen before, but one worthy of support and guaranteed to be a really fun afternoon or evening at the theater.
There's so much good stuff out there. Everybody get out there, support this local theater. It's amazing stuff. We're running out of time, so I'll wrap it up. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
I'm Benita Zahn. Take care. See you next time. Thanks, Owen.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything.